Let's start with the color scheme. That's what I always start with. Right now we've got no color scheme. Basically there's a blue background and some padding between these labels, and because there's padding between the labels we've got blue borders. We don't actually want borders, but we'll get rid of those one of these days. Since we don't want to change really the look of the app, we're not trying to change the way it looks. It looks good. I like the way it looks. It's looked pretty much the same forever because that's what I wanted from the beginning. What I want to change is the way it works behind the scenes when you change the color scheme. But in order to keep it looking the same, then we want to look at the current code and see a little bit about what it does. Not much, but a little bit. Open the widgets module, a big long dictionary that looks just like that. Okay, we've got this weird attribute called style, and we set it to one of these strings. And then this string is a key to a dictionary, which is its value. It's a nested dictionary. In this dictionary, we have the options included in that style. This is a good, simple system. It works, but for some reason it's slow. We're going to go back to do something we used to do, but what we want to do is keep these styles intact. So this is what's actually going to be needed for this style, etc. I want to do that quick and just like define maybe 2 styles, okay, maybe 1, and have it work and make a rudimentary colorizer, press a button, change the style. And then I want to change all these labels except for the headers. I want to change all these editable labels to text widgets instead of label widgets. What we used to do, which is no longer being done, is we made custom classes, and I got rid of hundreds of lines of code by no longer making custom classes. In other words, I'd inherit from TK label, from tkinter label, and I create my own label. Maybe one label do this and another label do that. I make the different label classes. I had a label button text class, a label dots class, this class, that class, all these different. I had a label H3 class for headings like this. So I guess the neat freak in me got the better of my common sense, and I decided to eliminate a whole bunch of code and make something that's short and sweet and easy to look at. I have not regretted it since, except for every time I change the color, I have to wait and watch it flash, deflash, flash, flash, because it's apparently very inefficient. See, for every widget, in order to recolorize, you have to read every widget in the application to find out what its style attribute is, and then match it up with this, and then apply these options to that widget. I think that's what's slow. Whereas before, we had predefined classes. We had a label tip class. We had a menu button class, and the class already had all these options in it. And all we changed was the formats dictionary. And I guess that's pretty much what we have to go back to and try to make it work really sweet this time. Try to use everything that I've learned over the ages to make it easier to use than the one that was before. And if not, well, at least we'll make it more efficient. The first thing to do is make a custom class for the columns. Well, we can make one for these too, but they're going to change. They're going to change into text widgets. Let's just make one for the column headers, and then make a colorizer and change the color on these. Okay, and then at that point maybe we'll change these to text widgets and then try and make a colorizer work for the text widgets too. Alright, so that's the plan. Winfo class will tell you what class a widget is. That's a tkinter class. Whereas this will tell you what subclass it is based on some Python code that I don't understand well enough to explain to you, but it does work. So this will tell you, like, is it label stay or label H3 or something like that. This is something we might be using. This uses a text to make a multi-line label where you can copy the stuff off of it, unlike a regular label, which is also multi-line, but you can't copy anything off of it. With this, which looks like a label but is actually a text widget, you type right into it, or you can disable it so it works like a label and you can't type into it, but you can copy the text also. This is a fairly simple one. It does a few things. Inherits from tkinter label, and then we put tkinter labels in it. You just follow the pattern, do it the same way every time. And then in here you do special stuff. This one highlights when you point at it with the mouse, unhighlights it when you go out of it. This is what I got rid of. I kept the ones that are special, but the ones that only change color, I got rid of them all. And I was so proud of myself. And instead I replaced it with a very inefficient process that's really slow. We're talking about adding a lot more code and having it run much faster, because all the classes are going to load along with their color options and font options and everything. All those classes are going to load when you start the app, instead of having to go look up every time you get to a widget during the recolorization process, having to look up that style in a dictionary. So the process of making a model involves not touching any of these other modules. So we're going to make a class right here in our model. This is already a class based on a tkinter frame. Let's make a class for the column headers. Make every class the same way, and then you don't have to know how they work. That's my model. Every tkinter widget class I inherit, I use the same routine. I always have master. So we're talking about following that pattern many times, because we're going to go back to the method of making subclasses and having all those subclasses predefined before you start, so the colorizer has less to do. So over here, let's look up this style, label H3. We can just copy this. So we got self to refer to all instances of the class. And then here's how I like to do this. You could say self.config, but I started doing it this way. I kind of like it. This reflects the fact that these options are actually in a dictionary somewhere inside tkinter. So we need a format. Why don't we try to import that? Because that dictionary is not changing. That's good stuff. We've got a class called label H3. So we're going to try using that instead of label. It's not going to be TK anymore. It's going to be just us. There you go. That's where I wanted to do it. There you go. Okay, now what we want to do is create a colorizer to change that. The Treebard colorizer is complex, and I don't want to change it at all. I will have changed a few lines, obviously, when this goes back into the main app. It changes this dictionary so that your background, foreground, and fonts are the only thing that the user can actually change as far as the Treebard's appearance. We don't have a lot of user options for fiddling with the way the Treebard looks, because we don't believe in it. We believe that we are the app designer, and we know what we want Treebard to look like. And if somebody wants to make Treebard look different, then they need to rewrite Treebard to suit themselves. I don't want a lot of user options, because that's not what I'm doing. I'm trying to do genealogy here. Now what I'm trying to figure out is how I can use that formats, which is a dictionary made by this method, which we imported, how I can use this without changing the one in the database, because I don't want to mess with that. I just want to do it real simple. The first thing that occurs to me is, how about if I make a copy of this dictionary, and then we'll keep that locally right here on this mini app and just change the copy and use that. root. Let's call this Treebard, just for the fun of it. And this is different. This is going to make a copy of that dictionary called Treebard formats, Treebard.formats, and we use that instead. And then when we make our little mini colorizer, we just try to hopefully just change this dictionary. So the button is going to say on it, and it's going to run a command. We're going to remember to grid it so it will appear. And we gridded it underneath this events table so it should appear. Need to make that command def. This is where we open up a color dialog for text in DG, background, foreground. We got 3 background colors and 1 foreground color. We're going to loop through those strings and make some entries and labels. This is the color dialog. This is the parent. The label is going to be to the left. We're going to make an index incrementer. The entry is going to be to the right. We're going to go up here and enumerate, which will create an indexer so that we have everything in a different row. We'll make 4 rows here. Equals east, west. Usually on labels you have to go like this. Enumerate needs 1 argument, so you put all this stuff in a tuple. There you go. That's going to be our colorizer. And then we'll just type some colors in there. Now let's make us a little rollback here. This means doing good, like what's happening. If I start messing up in the next few minutes, I can just roll back to this version. We're going to put us a button in this dialog, and it's going to run a function called OK, which is going to close the color dialog amongst other things. But first, it's going to get some information out of those entries. Since we made these entries dynamically, we don't have good names for them. So let's save the names for them. int.get, we're going to print that. This will print with a line number. It's a special thing I made. Now in order to run this OK function, we need a button. Goes in the color dialog. Black, pink, red, beige. And we're going to apply these colors to our dictionary. So instead of printing, what we want to do is go through the dictionary. Let's print the dictionary. The dictionary is called, the dictionary's got a lot more stuff in it than what we need, but it's alright. I don't want to change it because it is the one we are going to use eventually when we get to that point. I don't want to keep typing colors in here. Let's do that the easy way. And then when we make that entry, we're just going to stick some text in it at the same time. Starting from the first character and insert text corresponding to new colors IDX. IDX is our incrementalizer up here. I want that thing to be in focus automatically, so I just hit spacebar instead of grabbing my mouse. There it is. Now I just hit the spacebar. Just do this. Let's see what that looks like. I like to put my results in a different place. So here's ones we want to change right now in our widget. We have BG, FG, and font. And we're not changing font right now. This is totally different. We won't be changing font in this series. BG and FG is all that we're worried about right now. Okay, so how are we going to get something to change in this dictionary using this information in those entries, those colors? This tuple be saved with the name so we can refer to it. We'll just call it options for right now. Put it up here. Okay. Now we're enumerating that. Nothing has changed right now, but we need to refer to these because these are keys in our dictionary here, not these. These are keys in tkinter's innards. These are keys in our dictionary right here. These two are the ones we're going to use right now, but these are the four that we might use for different widgets. Let's say color equals int.get. So we're going to get that text. We're going to call it a color. And then for each color that we get, we also want to have something that we can look for in this tuple. See if that option is being used. Right now we don't have enough information in this list called entries. What we need is, instead of just the entry, we also need one of these values saved with it. And these are what we displayed in the labels to the left of the entries. So instead of just appending the entry name, it's like a reference to the widget, let's append also that text, because that text is going to be a key in formats dict. That's why I use these particular wordings. We can deconstruct this here. Equals int. Key is a key in Treebard formats, which is a dictionary, so it has keys. We're going to use the key, reset the color that's stored in the dictionary. Click OK. We got to reformat every label that happens to be a label H3 instance according to the new dictionary. See, look, Treebard formats now had black and pink in it, see, and red and tan. We got to apply those changes to the actual widgets. Now this is where we have to detect all the widgets. And we have a special way of doing that. It will get a reference to every widget in your application, every one. And then you run through a list of those widgets, check for which ones are in the subclass label H3, and you reconfigure those widgets according to the new dictionary. It's a recursive method, so I have to look it up every time because I can't memorize anything involving recursion. It's like I'm kind of hopeless. I don't do very many recursive functions. All right, here's the good stuff. Now we want to avoid the temptation of copying too much code out of here into our minimal version. Here's the important part right here. This is a recursive function. It's going to find every widget in and recolorize all of them. It also uses something called descendants. Blank list it starts with, and then it puts all the apps widgets into here. and you got a list of stuff. Get all descendants. We got to actually run that once, and then it keeps on running until it runs out of stuff. We want to run this inside of here, don't we? Yeah, I think so. This is Treebard. That is a top level dialog, or the main app is also a dialog. And then within this dialog, you get everything, every widget added to descendants. So to test if it's working, see if anything's in descendants. Colorize. Okay. Ooh, that seems to have worked. Descendants now has lots of stuff in it. These are all labels, right? Yeah. Let's see here now. How many labels do we actually have? 109, 110, 112. Look at that. There's a whole bunch of labels. This is 8 across times 14. Descendants is correct. It's got all our widgets in it. That's a big old long thing. Even though we have a small app, we still already have a bunch of widgets. 4. We're going to apply that formatting. I'm thinking I should go back to something that worked really smooth and sweet, and it was a little complicated for some of the more complex widgets, because some of the widgets, they change colors and stuff when you hover with the mouse. We'll get to that. It has to be dealt with. What if we just went back to more or less that system? I kind of remember how it worked because I did it for a long time. Let's just try to go back to that. Let's have something here called styles. Maybe it'll be a dictionary. I don't want to force my way back to some code that I used a long time ago, even though it worked, because what you got to do when you rewrite stuff is not look at your old code too much, because what happens over the years as you become a slightly better programmer gradually, you have better ideas. So if you just go back and look at your old code and copy it back in, well, you haven't done anything. And there is a chance that I will do something better if I rethink new thoughts instead of rethinking old thoughts. So I try not to look at my old code when I rewrite something, except in the case of magical stuff like this that is really awesome. Let's try making this a tuple of the relevant keys in the format dictionary, which are BG and FG. We're going to say subclass equals type widget dot underscore underscore name underscore underscore. Then we're going to look for this. This subclass is this. We're going to look in the styles dict and get those values. Those are keys in the formats dictionary, and they're going to correspond to keys in the formats dictionary. There's been an error right now. If subclass, this will be eliminated later, is not labeled H3, then we're going to keep looking. We don't have stuff in here for anything else yet, except label H3. So we might get a key error. Trying to loop through every widget. We're only looking for 8 widgets right now. We're going to ignore the others for a minute. Key equals treebard dot formats Oh my goodness, did you see that? It changed to black and tan. Ain't that cool? It worked the first time. I thought I was going to go down the wrong alleyway. Oh my, that made me feel happy inside. Talk to you next time. See you soon.